time to make your first hire in government contracting?
It's time to make your first hire when your ability to win new work becomes reduced by managing your current work. So if you were writing proposals, going after jobs, maybe attending site visits, building teams, and you've won a few contracts, maybe more than that, or maybe some really large contracts that are requiring a lot of time, when you reach that threshold, you're not going to really be able to invest anymore that same amount of time that you used to invest in going after new opportunities, writing new proposals, maybe building new relationships with new key agencies. So if you stay on that current path, your business and your revenue is going to go up and then it's going to go down. So it's going to go up and then it's going to go down, and you're going to end up exactly where you started eventually. The idea with business is to go up and to keep going up. And at that point in time is when you need to gain support so that you don't take one step forward and then have to take a step backwards in a few months or a year or whenever the work dries up again. You want to be able to keep bringing in new business, not just be one and done.
Why is it important to expand or hire support?
The small business owner is the biggest bottleneck in the business. And financially, short-term thinking, it could make sense as the owner to try to do everything yourself or try to do as much of yourself as possible and have as lean of a team or just one other person or two other people as possible. That way, payroll, overhead, and expenses remain low. And to some degree, your accountant will definitely agree with you when it comes down to your balance sheet, right? But from a strategic standpoint or from a positioning standpoint, here's something else that I see a lot. When the small business owner tries to do everything him or herself, they tend to do things the same way. They tend to go after the same, opportunities, and they kind of box themselves in. And that obviously is not a good thing for growth. You have to explore, new horizons, possibly add a service line, perhaps set aside maybe certainly different customers, right? So you need to have that constant growth and open-mindedness to keep pushing. Like I said in recent Q&A videos, what got you here is not going to be the same thing that got you there. And that's one of the big hurdles that turn into a bottleneck for a small business owner in government contracting. So the longer the small business owner wants to have everything flow through them, the slower the business is going to grow. Versus a small business owner that is not kind of treating it as their baby, right? And they're just doing what's good for the business, and they have a person for this or they have a person for that, and they stay focused and can continually to replace their activities with higher and higher and higher scoring activities or revenue generating activities, and they can have people to do these lesser activities, if you will, that are not doing as much for the business. It's actually less expensive to pay somebody to do it. At some point, the owner's time becomes so valuable. So this is why it's so important to expand, and it's so important to not be the bottleneck in your own business.
What should the role of your first GovCon hire be?
So I think the role should always be tied to project management. Project management is one of those things that can easily consume a lot of your time, and you've already won the contract, right? So you need to make sure you're continuing to do a good job on the contract, and you need to be sure to attend to any issues that may arise on the contract. But other than that, you want to keep things going well. If you're doing a good job, that shouldn't necessarily be taking a lot of time, unless it's a large contract and there's a lot of, reports and a lot of deliverables and a lot of employees, right? But a lot of people on the channel watching this are not necessarily looking at 50 new hires on a IT staffing contract per se, right? So that level of maintenance is not requiring a full-time person. So one of the big roles is to have one person who can see multiple projects, right? Because that person technically becomes less expensive. Because if you're billing all of their pay or a portion of their pay to a project, the more projects they are assigned to, the more you can bill against those projects, arguably making that person cheaper per project. And of course, you can't spread it around forever, but 4 or 5 contracts, depending, should be very feasible for a PM. So this is something that I highly recommend, but then also a hybrid approach, especially when your small business is really small and you're looking at your first hire. People you bring in also have to be tied to sales, right? So they should be also having some portion of the pipeline process. Maybe they're pre-vetting opportunities to bring to you as the owner, so that you're only looking at pre-vetted opportunities, or maybe you're showing them around, your proposal file structure, and they're able to tee up templates so that they can plug and chug, and that you can do pricing, or like whatever that is. They should be involved at some stage. Maybe they're on the phone, they're doing calls with contracting, or building teams, whatever. They should be adding some value to the new business line. And then also as a hybrid, they're working on any current contracts that you can build them out against. And if proposal writing is something that's of interest to you, you need support with, make sure you stick around to the end of this video. I'll give you my thank you gift that will help you with proposal writing. So I'll give you more details on that at the end of the video.
In your government contracting business, should you hire someone that you can train or someone that's already experienced?
I think you should hire somebody that you can train. Someone who's experienced is going to be very, very expensive. I've seen it firsthand many, many times. And very often those people are looking for a meal ticket, and they're just going to be dead weight on your company. Odds are you're not going to have that many candidates that would be lining up to work for your company, because you're probably very, very small and you don't have much to offer anyways. But if you do a job posting for PM and biz dev or proposal writing, you never know who's going to respond. So you want to make sure you're clear on who you want before you try to write a job posting or push that out to the world. So I prefer someone who you can train, and that means you need to have some systems in place, some SOPs in place in terms of procedures, systems, plans that you're working from. That way you can look at this and say, okay, what part do I want to be involved in, and what part do I want another person to be involved in? This way I can, hopefully as a team, we can push out twice as many proposals and win twice as many contracts, every quarter, something like that, right? That becomes an investment. That becomes a clear payoff. That's a clear signal of like, is this working, and what is the expectation here? If you don't have that figured out, you need to have that figured out before you bring somebody into the game. But yeah, I recommend training somebody 10 out of 10 times over hiring somebody with experience.
What makes a good candidate to bring into government contracting?
So government contracting, it's a world, in and of itself. A lot of people don't know about it. And you guys watching these videos probably don't have many people, right, that you can just pick up a conversation about government contracting with. It's not a super popular thing. It is a fairly small world once you get into it. But it's a huge industry in and of itself. Like I said, it's just not necessarily super mainstream. So when you're looking for a candidate to bring into government contracting, you want somebody who's resourceful. You want somebody who could, for example, as I say, run a full desk. You're also looking for someone who's not wanting to own their own business. You don't want to train somebody just for them to say, oh, this is easy, or I understand this now. And they take all of your IP, and then you compete against them. They go and open up their own company, you get their own cage code. So you want to make sure that they're looking to be part of the team as a team player, but they want to have their own flexibility. They want to have their own, autonomy to make decisions, to, build their book of business, or to manage the project the way they want to manage it, or whatever, right? Because you want them to take ownership of it. You're not looking to bring somebody on that you have to babysit. You're looking to bring somebody on who can take stuff off of your plate and free up your calendar, not the other way around.
How can you structure paying an employee so that they're not too costly to the company?
First thing, I already mentioned it, try to build them to a project. If you don't know what I mean when I say that, you should have a PM on any project. But in some instances, that if you don't have anybody, that's you. So if you can put them on the project instead of you, that frees up your time. Your time is worth money. So you have a bit of a budget to have them do it instead of you. And very literally, to an accounting sense, there is a way of accounting for that as well. So always put them on a project, at least in the confines and boundaries of the way I'm describing this first hire. After that, you can pay them a base. Doesn't necessarily have to be a big base, but it's another way of giving them some, regular pay to keep them around. If you just have one or two projects and you want them to grow with the company and you don't necessarily have enough to keep them busy with PM duties every week, weekly long, monthly long, they're going to have to be more heavy into business development stuff. So they're going to have a bit of a base, but then you also, thirdly, incentivize them with commission. So you make them billable against the projects, you give them a base, and you give them commission. So only one out of those three things are coming out of the company profit, right? The other is incentivizing. And you can also, even as a fourth thing, you can give them some sort of bonus if they can, finish the project, under the timeline or, just in a less costly way, I would say. Incentivize them to save the company money, because then your profitability goes up and they also have an opportunity to make additional income as well. Everything doesn't have to just be on payroll as a paycheck, guys. Like, you can build in these different incentives and these different billable structures to make it make sense for your company, because the first hire is the scariest, and it can feel like it's your biggest and most costly expense to some degree as an overhead expense to have somebody sitting remotely or sitting in the office with you. It's really is a big deal. So this is what I see a lot of companies do to bridge that first gap of their first new hire when they're looking at bringing somebody on in the terms of financial consideration.
Bonus question. What was your dream job as a kid?
All right. So as a kid, I wanted to be a martial arts instructor, as funny as that sounds. But I was really into it. I was in karate when I was younger, used to watch Bloodsport, a few other ones, Mortal Kombat was big. I was just really into martial arts. I think growing up as a kid in the 90s, it was just, Ninja Turtles. It was a big thing for everybody at the time. Oh gosh, there's one more. What is it called? Oh, Best of the Best 2. Best of the Best 1 and Best of the Best 2. Those were also big ones for me. Tommy Lee, the big German guy that he would fight against. So yeah, martial arts instructor all the way for me as a kid. Now guys, as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you're into proposal writing, you're looking for additional support to take you to the next level. That's why I created GovRFP. The purpose of GovRFP is if you need a government proposal, get GovRFP. And I've recently, as that thank you that I mentioned, opened up the first 3 modules for a limited time for you to get into this training. It's the same proposal writing system that I've taught my students for years, but over the last 12 months and the adoption of AI just going crazy, right? I've really retooled it and retweaked it and made it a lot tighter, a lot more succinct, so that in a matter of a few hours, you can go through the entire GovRFP training and end up with a proposal that is not only compliant, but something that you are very confident and excited to submit your next offer to whoever that lucky contracting officer is going to be. So to gain access to that, you just need to email, and you can visit my website, GovKidMethod.com. To get that, just click on the GovRFP tab and unlock the modules there. Now, another really interesting and important thing that comes with proposal writing is government forms. And if you're looking for additional training, I just released very, very recently a new training on government forms that I highly recommend that you check out. I'll put that up on the screen in case you want to watch that. For the next training, next format, just like this on government forms, you got to check it out. It's the standards for everybody. You must know it. So if you don't know the forms, you got to check out that training. And guys, we're one of the fastest federal growing government contracting channels here on YouTube. So give us a subscribe. It really does help us grow, and it signals to me that we're doing something right, and we want to have you be part of the community. So again, check out that next training. Thank you for watching. We will see you guys all in the next one. Take care.